Yes, friends. It's OGP on a Monday, the One Giant podcast. You may not have heard me give the intro before the opening theme music, but by goodness, we'll go ahead and get it covered for you again. We welcome you in over on YouTube this fine morning as we, of course, say, welcome, Marty. Grab your cup of coffee. Let's dive in. Said at the top there, coming off that win on Sunday over the Chicago Bears at home, the Giants are 3-1, as we know. They're preparing to head out to London coming up next week. And this is about the ankle injury update for one Daniel Jones, a rumored potential addition for the New York Football Giants on the defensive side of the ball, and maybe just telling us what Wink Martindale still feels like he may need on that side for his unit. And then, of course, what did the first four games really mean for the Giants? How do we feel 4 games into this season? If you did not, you can go check out, as we're a little bit off here on our video feed for YouTube. If you did not check out the post-game reaction for myself and Andrew Makowitz, be sure to go check that out on YouTube. It is there for you. We also hopped on, had some good conversations with Justin Pennick last night. He was running a live over on Twitter, got into the conversation, and some of it was about Daniel Jones. Where is he? Where do we think the coaching staff is on him? And how is this season unfolding from a short-term, long-term, now, future picture? It's all seemingly happening simultaneously for Big Blue. But to keep our focus narrowed, and this is going to be a brief morning session here, we'll come back in tomorrow and continue to flesh things out. There were some updates around the New York Football Giants and expectations for Daniel Jones and the ankle injury. So we start there. First, let's just kick it off with, I feel good. That was Daniel Jones after the game yesterday. A little sore, but all good. Listen to the trainers and the doctors and go from there, but feeling good. Just to supplement that with a little commentary from one Saquon Barkley, when I saw Tyrod go down, I kind of realized I'm up next. I'm the quarterback, Barkley said. First of all, you have to give credit to DJ coming back into the game. I can't curse. He's a tough you-know-what. Nothing but respect for him to go in and continue to fight through that for his team. Just shows you the type of person and type of player he is. I think I just tried my best to read it. It's really not that hard, I guess, but I think I made the right reads on them when he was in the game. Saquon obviously filling in at quarterback essentially, but we were able to keep the ball moving, get downfield, get some points, and the defense did a great job for us. Obviously, a little tongue-in-cheek as far as not being that difficult, although essentially when your role is to take that ball and either run it, take that ball and hand it off to a teammate, it's not the highest level of QB play that is required. However, we're going to flesh out what it means with the multiple facets of this, right? First and foremost, let's go ahead and take a look at the fact that we did have Ian Rappaport come out and say Daniel Jones, who left Sunday's game with an ankle injury, is considered day-to-day. A source said, while tests will continue, there is some optimism that he plays, which is good. That means Saquon Barkley can remain at running back. Obviously, again, tongue-in-cheek, we understand that. But I will say, it'll be interesting to see what happens here. Day to day, I don't know if that is not bad news, right? It's not he's out. It's not fears the worst. But day to day combined with the idea of they're going to be cautious, they're going to listen to the doctors. I don't know what this is going to look like as we work our way through the week. Daniel Jones was physically out there. He was able to run into the huddle, run out and stand on the sidelines there, got himself back under center, back in shotgun at certain points. And yet, there was no chance that they were going to have him throw a football in those scenarios. So what it looks like here over the course of the week is certainly going to be something to watch, especially because we also know that one Tyrod Taylor is going to be in concussion protocols. So now they still obviously have Davis Webb. We were talking about this yesterday. What would the Giants do in a scenario where Tyrod is out and Daniel Jones is going to be out? You'll have to have somebody on the roster pulled off the streets just to give yourself a backup. But it's not like there's a ton of players out there, right? The QB position, I don't even know if there's 32 high quality quarterbacks in the league, let alone having another 32 backups. Maybe if you're the Dallas Cowboys and Cooper Rush, right? Maybe if you're the 49ers and you keep a very expensive backup to start the year in Jimmy G. The bottom line is, with the way the New York Football Giants were able to win that game on Sunday, I think that it lends itself to the idea, the progression of this team so far this season has not been about the QB first. It's been about Daniel Jones' legs first and foremost. And we talked a lot about the wide receiver room yesterday too. Um, but that's what this offense is affording, whether it's from an execution standpoint, whether it's offensive line play, whether it's talent, whether it's understanding of the playbook. I think that that's a big factor that cannot be overlooked here. A couple of weeks ago, Sterling Shepard said, we're not fully up to speed in this playbook. Sometimes we're lining up in the wrong spots. That's on us. We need to do better. We need to clean that stuff up. And a lot of the commentary, just to tie it back into Daniel Jones and to what Saquon said there, a lot of the commentary in general, and you expect to hear this from teammates on a team, so we're not going to overstate it. But everything has been, we got to do better for Daniel Jones from the offensive line when they have bad games. We need to do a better job catching the football, being lined up correctly. Daniel Jones is one tough SOB, right? Like everyone is certainly rallying in support of Daniel Jones. And I think that it's easier to do it in a year like this under a head coach that is preaching this process, right? That things are going to continue to get better and that we need to continue to work on some of those fine details. And when you come out of some games like that Dallas one, where there's no other way to look at it than saying, yeah, he got absolutely brutalized, right? You cannot look at Daniel Jones as being the first issue or even the second or maybe even the third in those scenarios. A very interesting fact that we want to get to here, and Andy and I had talked about it through text last night. We were going back and forth. It's interesting because the New York Football Giants quarterback, Daniel Jones, who only threw 13 passes in yesterday's game. So we give context wherever it's needed, but once again was able to use his legs to be effective. It's really interesting to look at QBR, something that I believe in using because it takes into game situations and the productivity based on the play around you, the time, the distance, the opportunity, the quality of the looks that you're getting. So there were a couple of things that we saw. First and foremost, coming out of yesterday's game, there's no other way around the fact that Daniel Jones posted his highest QBR of his career. Highest QBR of his career, a 92.3 QBR on 8 of 13 passing, 71 yards. Also, obviously, contributed 6 rushes for 68 yards and the 2 touchdowns. Like those were the big ones, right? 21-yard long for him in that game. This is the part of it where the real question becomes, and we're not going to stay macro on this. Daniel Jones is giving the Giants the best chance to win football games right now because he has the ability to run, as we've seen him do, and he has the ability to be effective enough in some of these other areas of his game. But I am absolutely fascinated by the idea of a quarterback that's throwing for 70 yards in a game. We know he gets hurt, but even if you extrapolated it out a little bit, I don't know if we're getting much past 125 maybe passing yards, because there were a couple of drops in this game, maybe 16, 17 passes, right? The Giants and the offense are trying to find ways to grind out wins. And I think that over the first 4 weeks, we've seen a mentality. I'd be very curious to be able to go back to before the first game against the Tennessee Titans and say, what is Brian Daboll in his heart of hearts really concerned about? Evaluation or getting wins? And there's a combination of a both and. And yet you win week 1, you go, well, okay, like pick it up, put it in your pocket, right? Missed field goal. We'll take it. Like we're all forgetting that it was a missed field goal that ultimately gave him that win, and it doesn't matter, right? You win that game. Then game number 2 comes, and all of a sudden you beat the Carolina Panthers, and then you lose a disappointing one to the Dallas Cowboys, but you turn around and you beat Chicago. You're 3-1. There's no other way to look at it than being 3-1, being in the driver's seat for a wild card spot right now, right? Very much still in the division conversation. All of those things, I do think, start to change a little bit how you approach game to game, and understanding we can accomplish 2 things here: develop our talent, evaluate our talent, and also give the fan base something to be excited about for as long as possible. Maybe it's going to change when they play Green Bay if Daniel Jones isn't available, or even if he is. Maybe it's going to change after that Baltimore Ravens game in 2 weeks. Maybe that Jacksonville Jaguars game is going to look more difficult than we realize, right? Like there's so many things that 2, 3, 4 weeks from now are going to look drastically different, but we all get to be excited as Giants fans because they're winning games. And I, as much as anyone, have fallen victim to loving that they're winning and not being able to stop myself from critiquing and analyzing where this team is and the things that need to change. The other note that I want to get to here, as we said, brief one on Monday morning. We may come back in later today as more news comes out, see if we can sync up with Andy and do a little bit of a deeper conversation. But if not, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, we'll be back in breaking it all down. The other note that came out here, a bit of a Giants rumor. Landon Collins, former New York Football Giant, three-time Pro Bowler, played with Washington, the Commanders last year, as we know, is visiting with the New York Giants. And the most interesting thing, this was reported by Art Stapleton, that he was already scheduled for a visit before they had several injuries in the 20-12 win over Chicago on Sunday. He spent the previous 3 seasons, as we said, with the Commanders before being released in March. Bit of a surprise. He remains a free agent at this point. He did visit with some teams. I think he visit with New England as well this offseason. I'm trying to remember where he had gotten to. But the big quote, the big note here on this from Art Stapleton came via Wink Martindale. If you have a slow mic, you have a slow defense. Giants were in talks with Landon Collins before yesterday, and he'll visit today. They see a fit in the box, always Collins' strength, but Landon has always fought notions of being a linebacker. Does that matter now? So here's what I think is fascinating about this. We came out of Sunday singing the praises of Tay Crowder. I thought we had maybe his best game of his Giants career, obviously his best game of the season. He keeps building in that role. You saw a little bit of Jalen Smith out there, who had spent time with the team briefly last season, brought back in and elevated from the practice squad. He's been getting some reps, right? I thought that, again, Azeez Ojulari and Kayvon Thibodeau did a nice job getting pressure and also trying to contain that edge, prevent the running backs from getting out there in space and really being effective. It'll be interesting. If you bring in a guy like Landon Collins and you say your primary function is to be speed down in the box, to maybe be like we had talked about in the offseason, what was the role going to be for Julian Love? Could you see him down in the box a little bit? If Landon Collins can come in and be a thumper, because we'll go ahead and just do a little comparison chart here, right? So the New York Football Giants, when we look inside of the depth chart room and we talk obviously about the Giants secondary and where they stand right now. So on the back end of this defense, we're talking about having a player like Xavier McKinney, who we know is fast. He's playing at 6 foot 201. He's the jackknife. You love him in space. You love what he can bring to the table. Julian Love, who is questionable, as I almost forgot to mention here, concussion. I completely forgot about this in yesterday's postgame. It was mentioned on the broadcast. I made a note of it at the time and forgot. He also entered into that concussion protocol. So this can be a both and, losing Julian Love, even though we've heard, at least from Art Stapleton, who's a respected reporter around the Giants, that this was going on before yesterday and before the injuries that happened. But Julian Love was coming in playing at 5'11", 195. Okay. You want to go down into the Dane Belton, the rookie. He's certainly showing some things. 6'1", 205. I bring that up because I'm going to do it in real time here. Landon Collins is a man who comes in at, let's talk about it. He's a 6-footer. He's a 6-footer. I need to know. I need to know if we've got him over the tilt of 205, because more power, more muscle, a little bit of weight behind what he can bring to the field. That's what we're potentially talking about here. 218. There you go, right? You're talking about a guy that offers 15 to 20 pounds, maybe, if he goes ahead and comes in a little bit more bulked up than maybe he has been even in the last couple of seasons. That makes a difference. You're not too far off from being able to contribute inside of the run game. Yeah, exactly. Troy, as you mentioned here in the chat, he can play on rundowns because he can't cover. You're darn tootin' he can't. But that's okay. Remember, Darian Beavers got hurt in the preseason, lost for the year. That was brutal for the New York Football Giants. I think that you would have seen him be an integral part of what they were doing defensively. We've seen Micah McFadden. He can be a real bullet getting down through those gaps. He made a little bit of a young rookie mistake there, took a penalty, but he's still developing. Tay Crowder, Jalen Smith. You released Blake Martinez, right? There's just a lot of things happening inside of that linebacker room. If you can put a body on there that has the speed to go sideline to sidelines and help in that run defense, I think it can make a world of difference here, especially as we've talked about, Kayvon Thibodeau, Azeez Ojulari, your first rule is get after the quarterback, get that pressure. But you need to be setting the edge. You need to be working laterally, sideline to sideline, and shutting down some of these explosive plays that we've seen out of the running game, going back to the Tennessee Titans, going back to Tony Pollard, pass catching or rushing. And then likewise, this past week, the big concern was going to be Khalil Herbert and what he was going to bring to the table. So I like it. I'm not against this. Andy had brought up Landon Collins in the offseason. Giants fans had brought up Landon Collins in the offseason. And I said, I don't see him as a safety being a quality addition to this room at this point. He was never a great secondary player, but he was always good at getting downhill and playing into the box. He'll hit up Troy over here in the chat again. Do you think Tay Crowder is the guy to man the middle? He got torched a few weeks in coverage. Yeah, and I guess this is like the both and, right? So Tay Crowder, I think, has done such a better job of developing his ability in the middle of that defense, playing against the run, getting pressure on the quarterback. Like, he has been really strong in that facet of his game. We know that he has quickness. He's not the biggest linebacker, and yet he does have difficulties in coverage. Is Landon Collins a marginal upgrade there in that capacity when you want to use him? Maybe. And I think something that we've seen on both sides of the ball, and certainly a ton from Wink Martindale early in this season, is the ability, the willingness to be versatile on a week-to-week basis, on a personnel package basis, and say, hey, I am going to look at who we have available and manufacture ways to try to have a successful defensive game plan. And I think that they can do that. It just comes down to, is Landon Collins someone that you add into that mix and creates that level of versatility? Yeah, people are mentioning here in the live stream over on YouTube. That's what it is. We're talking about adding him into that interior linebacker room. That's where he's going to play. Now, the other thing is too, obviously he's not that far off at 218, 220 coming in. That's big enough of a body to be considered a linebacker at the NFL level. The other piece would be the versatility that it will create in and around the box, as far as, yes, Landon Collins on the inside, but when you want to work blitz packages, all of a sudden you could say, I want to see Tay Crowder in the middle of the field. I want to see Jalen Smith worked into the middle of the field. I'm going to put Landon Collins coming off the edge. I'm going to manufacture those scenarios where Landon Collins may look like he's playing at the safety position, but really it's just a precursor to him blitzing. It's a precursor to him coming off the edge and trying to get pressure, right? So there's those different ways that you can use Landon Collins while always mitigating those areas of risk. So I'm all for this. If they think it's going to help the team, I'm all for it. If Wink Martindale sees a trait that can work and function for them. And again, coming into this season, we were not high on what Tay Crowder was going to be. He stepped up. He has played very well this season. I want to make that plain. I have been very impressed with how Tay Crowder has performed this year. And also, it doesn't mean that the New York Football Giants don't want to improve that position. And by the way, Collins is what we're going to call a Band-Aid, right? This is a Band-Aid. This isn't surgery to fix the wound. We're just trying to plug up a hole here in the short term and wait to see what happens in the long term. So we'll have to wait and see on this. We'll cover it throughout the week. He's visiting today. If it breaks and he ends up being brought in, maybe we'll come back in later this afternoon and discuss a little bit more in depth how it's going to fit. Back at the top of this show, as we were discussing, the big one is day-to-day for Daniel Jones on the ankle. Wait and see how he's feeling throughout the week. If Tyrod Taylor cannot go because he's in concussion protocol and is not cleared for the upcoming game in London against Green Bay, we'll be talking about putting Davis Webb out there. That'll be its own unique set of circumstances as far as how the Giants offense is going to operate. We understand they've been incredibly run heavy, but if you take away some of that mobility that you get with Daniel Jones or with a Tyrod Taylor, all of a sudden how defenses look at Saquon Barkley, how Green Bay will look at Saquon Barkley is going to become a little bit different. His toughness was respected. His toughness was heralded by Saquon Barkley. The team believes that he is doing everything the right way, players, coaches around him. So unfortunate. And I don't know if we mentioned this yesterday or not, this is one of those components, right? Okay, Daniel Jones, 92.2 QBR. Most of that is predicated on what he did with his legs, and that's totally fine. unfortunately, what he did with his legs, even though it came on a sack, it also is a factor when he gets these injuries, right? Is this a quarterback that can stay healthy and play this version of QB? Josh Allen has shown that he can do that, right? Mahomes, different versions of these guys. Lamar Jackson, at least to this point. Anyone who's shown mobility, anyone who's shown they use their legs as a big facet of their game as a QB, they've been showing the both and the ability to do it and also to be healthy. So far now in year number 4, we're seeing Daniel Jones can do it, but can he stay healthy? And the more that you push him in that direction is maybe the potential for more concerns around injuries. And then you have to think about who's in behind him and how do you still find a way to manufacture wins. That being the case, my friends, we'll go ahead and we'll put a little cap on this one. We'll also keep an eye on Julian Love and his concussions protocol for him. Where does he stand coming throughout this week? I'll take a quick look here if I can at any other news and notes just around the Giants from an injury standpoint. We're going to get into throughout this week. What do the Giants do when it comes to the wide receiver room, right? David Sills. I said this is where everyone's now bashing David Sills, but let's live in reality, friends. This is a sixth wide receiver on the depth chart, maybe a practice squad wide receiver, and he's being elevated to a number 2 with consistency. That's what's going to happen. You get exposed, right? So we know Daniel Jones with the ankle. We know Tyrod Taylor with the concussion. We know Julian Love with the concussion. We can also add in Evan Neal. We did talk about him yesterday. He had the neck. He was questionable to return. We'll see if anything from that lingers. Also in this game, we did see Aaron Robinson. He was ruled out on Sunday. Wondering about, they had said he had that appendectomy. It was just about protecting the sutures, protecting the spot on the body where the surgery had occurred. It didn't look like it was related to that. I thought that they had said it was a lower body injury. So we'll look to see if we get any more information on him. It just said questionable. Yeah, knee. It was knee for him. And then Kenny Golladay again. He had a knee concern as well and left the game. So there was with every single day, you go ahead and get yourself another slew of injuries. And just to close out for the question, we will update this during the week in terms of Leonard Williams, Wan'Dale Robinson, Kadarius Toney. Coming into this week, this past Sunday, it looked like they were getting close. I would be shocked if Leonard Williams didn't play. That would be the first number 1 shock. I think Wan'Dale is really close. Kadarius Toney is hard to pin down because there's been weeks where he's practiced during the week and then gets downgraded, right? The hamstring issue, which has plagued him a little bit. I sometimes get frustrated around that because that's a conditioning component, which I don't love. Like that some of that goes into preparation. And you have your concerns if a player struggles to stay healthy in what feels like manageable areas. We'll see what happens over the course of this week. Obviously, if Daniel Jones plays and if you get a Wan'Dale Robinson or a Kadarius Toney or any of these guys back, it improves your chances to stay competitive against Green Bay. I'm going to be interested to see if Khalil Pimpleton, who I wanted to see this week, I thought they should have given him a look. Now, obviously, if he's not ready to come up. But I would have taken a look at him as well. So we'll go ahead and see how things flesh out. It's Monday, friends. And by the way, it's Monday following a New York Football Giants win. But in true 2022 New York Giants fashion, you cannot just win a game. You also have to have 3, 4, 5 injuries. It has to be the quarterback, right? You have to have a laundry list of issues that potentially are going to plague this team going forward. We'll continue to flesh this out throughout the week. We'll talk about the injury updates. We'll talk about how they're going to approach trying to take on Aaron Rodgers and the Green Bay Packers and continue to manufacture some success, even looking at the free agency waiver wire. Although, to be honest, there's not a lot out there when we talk about wide receivers and then trying to bring in some additional help here for the offensive side of the ball. We did touch on and we'll continue to flesh out this idea of utilizing the running back group more, expanding where Saquon Barkley gets used, if it's possible, off of a career-high 31 carries, using Matt Breida, using Gary Brightwell. Just use the talent you have to try to find a way to manufacture wins. Thank you so much, my friends, for joining us on the YouTube Live. You get us over on the podcast feed as well, wherever you get those needs fulfilled. Subscribe all over the place, man. Share it. We love doing it. We're going to try to dial up some crossovers as we progress our way through this season. In the meantime, if Andy Makowitz were here, he would want, need, and nay, demand the people know, as always, let's go Big Blue.